You're listening to the Synergy Leadership Podcast, a discussion with engaging, empowering, and enlightening leaders about the greatest competitive advantage in business and entrepreneurship that often goes unrecognized: a team's energy. Here's your host, the woman who puts the energy in synergy, Karen R. Jenkins.
Hello, and welcome to this issue of Synergy Leadership Institute. I am so excited to have a special guest that is joining us directly from Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Amir Ghannad. Mr. Amir, thank you so much for being here with us today.
It is my pleasure. Thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate it.
Great you have so much experience and so much information to share. I'd like to start off by just having you introduce yourself to our audience today. Tell us a little bit about you and what got you to this point in your career.
Sure. So Amir Ghannad, basically my family and I are the Ghannad Group. For the last 6 years, we've been guiding leaders and creating extraordinary cultures that deliver breakthrough results and unprecedented fulfillment. For about 30 some odd years prior to that, I worked for various companies in the corporate world. I was with Procter & Gamble for about 19 years, different parts of the world, in Thailand and Germany, different parts of the US. Then I was with Sunny Delight for about 8.5 years. And then I spent the last 4 years of my corporate career with Campbell Soup. Now, my background is in mechanical engineering, so I have a master's in mechanical engineering, but very early in my career, I discovered that my real passion was working with organizations and helping people sort of bring out the best in themselves and get in touch with the transformative leader within, if you will. So I spent the rest of my career actually in manufacturing and supply chain, but always I was doing that from an angle of empowering people, energizing people, and things like that. So that's a bit about me.
Awesome. Well, of course, you talk about empowering people, you talk about energizing people. With our Synergy Leadership podcast, you know that Synergy Leadership for us, or for me, is the ability for us to leverage our energy and the energy of those around us to reach our optimal results. So you have had a lot of experience with a multitude of large companies, and you call yourself the Leadership Development and Cultural Transformation Specialist. Share with us a little bit about what that actually means.
Yeah, so my experience is that, everybody wants to be part of something big. Like, think about a person who starts a new job with a new company. Nobody goes in wanting to be mediocre, right? I mean, everybody wants to be part of something big. But then what happens is that we end up allowing our differences, be it whatever kind of differences we have of opinion, different backgrounds or different departments and expertise and all of that, get in the way. And before you know it, 1 + 1 ends up being 1 or 1.5. Whereas, synergy, as you know very well, 1 + 1 is 3 or more. And so what we do is when we go into organizations, generally we do a couple of things. We start with basically a conversation about discovering the transformative leader within, because before we can go out and transform the culture, we each really need to look at ourselves, whether you are a leader at the top of the organization or you are on the front lines or anywhere in between. It's important that everybody looks at what is getting in the way of them being the sort of the transformative leader that they already are. Because I really believe that there is a transformative leader inside each of us, but then there are these 7 hidden saboteurs that I talk about that are in the way. So one of the early things that we do is we actually help people see those things and get them out of the way. Now, there's no finish line to that process. That's an ongoing process to continue to be better and better as a leader. But as we get started with that work, then we basically work with organizations who are frustrated with, lack of engagement, lack of enthusiasm, or everybody kind of doing their own thing and not really being involved. We help them create the right culture that really energizes people and causes them to see how they're part of something big, and so they want to offer their discretionary effort. So that's basically what leadership development on culture transformation is all about as far as what we're concerned.
Awesome. So share with us a little bit. I think I shared with you when we spoke last that my background is I'm an entrepreneur. By her, I'll say it this way: I didn't plan it. Right, I was actually thrown in the ocean without a raft
Right.
to learn how to swim because in 2007 I got laid off from my position, and found myself needing to make my own opportunities. So share with us a little bit about how you transitioned. Well, how did Procter & Gamble prepare you for this new role as an entrepreneur? And then what was your story? How did you transition from the corporate arena into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think this is a really important topic, and I really appreciate you asking that question. I understand that over the last 12 months, we've had more LLCs that have been formed and more people who have tried their hand at entrepreneurship than in the recent in history. And I think it's really important for people to sort of get in touch with a few fundamental things that are really necessary if you're going to go do that. Because sometimes we think, well, it's really lucrative, or I'm going to be my own boss and so on and so forth. But if you don't have the fundamentals in place, you may have some success, but it's not going to be, it's not going to really last. So for me personally, the greatest training ground that I've had for this role and the success that we've had at the Ghannad Group has been 31 years of experience of really constantly cultivating those skills and abilities in myself, and really being an internal consultant, if you will, when I was working with Campbell Soup, where I supported multiple plants and really partnered with them and all of that. So I think that sort of expertise is really, really important. So what I would say is, first of all, if I were to give some advice to someone who is considering doing something like that, going out on their own, is first of all, know your message and your audience. What is it that you're good at, and who needs that message? The other thing is, don't try to be an expert at everything. I mean, most of us can probably list a number of things that we can do, but you don't want to go become an expert at, or show yourself as an expert on everything. But so narrow your focus down. The other thing, quite honestly, is make a commitment to exceptional value, to bringing exceptional value, not just kind of doing the bare minimum, because the first few gigs that you get, the first few jobs that you get, really great. They might come because of your marketing or whatever else, but whether you get referrals and more business, that really depends on whether you're really bringing exceptional value. I wrote a blog post on this on our website, theghannadgroup.com, and it's titled 14 Tips for Successful Consulting. This is where I put the names of several books that I recommend that people read and all of that. But there's just one other thing that I will mention here, Karen, and that is, I think it's really important for people to have a financial plan. Give yourself walk-away power, whether it's putting some savings aside or reducing your spending or whatever it takes, so that you're not so desperate to say, I've got 2 months to make this business succeed. If you have the option, give yourself a little bit of cushion so that you're not desperate, right? Because that way you get to make choices, you get to sort of price your offerings right, and so on, rather than giving it away, and so on and so forth. And it just really sets you up for success. So those are just a few pointers, but again, more available in that blog post. And I'm happy to send you the link if you'd like to include that.
Please do that. And
Yeah.
I was going to ask you how we can get in contact with you at the end of the session. So we'll repeat that again at the end.
Sure.
So we talk about small businesses. So as I said, for myself, I had 23 years in the corporate arena, and then kind of was forced or chose to open up a small business. And what I found in my travels of talking to other small businesses, that, as you said, somebody finds that they have a gift or two. They decide, I'm going to go into business offering this gift. And it could be consulting, it could be leadership training, it could be pouring concrete, it could be providing transportation services. And that is their gift. But for me, I've discovered that that's about 35% of being in business. The gift, the thing that you do well, is one thing, but there's a 65% of actually managing and running a business. And I love the fact that you talked about the financial piece. There's the operational piece. There's the marketing piece. There's the branding piece. There's the legal piece, the structure. All of these pieces come together to ensure that you are operationally efficient and you're compliant. What did you do when you got into the world of business? Because you came from Procter & Gamble, you probably had access to a whole lot of information and people to do things for you. But when you become an entrepreneur, normally it's just you. And all of a sudden you go from wearing one hat to 50. So talk to us about what steps did you take to ensure that you were compliant, that you had that financial cushion, that you could take care of that 65% of the actual running the business?
Yeah, my story is that essentially my daughter is the entrepreneur in the family, and she's the one who is actually responsible for getting my book published, because I was going to publish it someday. So she kicked my butt in 2015 and gave me assignments and essentially published the Transformative Leader. And then she started getting on my case about leaving my corporate career behind and going out there and making it happen. So I really had not just a cheerleader, but someone who was very, very good at looking at different aspects of what it takes to start a business. So I'd say if you have somebody like that in your life, make sure that you get them involved. If not, tap into experts who know some things that you don't know. Right. Once she and I started working together, we started out being really scrappy. I think one of the mistakes that I see people make is that they start a business, and way before they have any kind of business, they go out and pile up all kinds of expenses and hire all kinds of people and buy all kinds of things. And for us, it wasn't like that. We started very scrappy. We tried to learn everything that we could ourselves, and occasionally we would tap into an expert. And again, I don't have anything against that. If you have the funds and the means, do that. But start small and be very scrappy. But the other thing is that you're right. For me, I personally didn't really know anything about running a business. My expertise was leadership development, culture transformation, but now I had to learn all these other things. And so what I learned was that what's really important is to make sure that you set up procedures and systems for internal communication. And there are a number of very important things that you've got to do. How are we going to maintain our mailing list? How are we going to make sure that our bills are paid? Are we paying our taxes? Have we registered our business? Do we have a bank account? There are a number of things. And again, in that blog post, I recommend resources to handle all of those different things. But one thing that I will definitely mention from a marketing perspective, because again, I know very few experts who just kind of say, yeah, I have this expertise, but I really look forward to going and selling it. I don't like marketing and selling, but what I do like is building relationships and that sort of thing. But in order to do that right, you've got to get real clear about what your message is. So people, don't end up burning a bunch of calories when they go to your, website, trying to figure out what it is that you do and how they can engage you. Right. So Donald Miller has a great book that I, reference in this post as well. Story brand, building a story brand that really does a good job of saying, okay, since you're the expert, let's just kind of bring that down to who is it that needs your business? What is it that you do for them, and how they can engage you? So those fundamentals, if you get those in place and then begin to organically grow the business, that is what has worked for us.
That is awesome. And I like the fact that you mentioned Donald Miller. I went to a conference a couple of years ago. It was Dave Ramsey had EntreLeadership. So we went to that, and Donald Miller actually spoke. So we went and got his book, and we've actually applied it within our organization.
Awesome.
And I love the fact that you're an author. I'm an author in my previous life. I did financial literacy, was doing a television segment here locally. We ran for about 5 years. It was called Women, Wisdom, and Wealth. My book
Yes.
is called Nobody Told Me: The Path to Financial Empowerment. And it's basically a basic financial literacy book that I have to tell people there's certain things that I didn't learn in high school and I didn't learn in college, and I didn't learn until I had to learn the hard way, because nobody really teaches you about money, right?
True.
But I love the fact that you're an author, and we're going to find out how we can get access to your book. But what I found is that education doesn't have to be expensive. Training doesn't have to be expensive. And I read. I did not read a lot in high school. That was not my forte. But of course, who wants to read a textbook, right? And reading, to me, for an entrepreneur is crucial. So tell us a little bit about you're an author, you're sharing your information, you're sharing your gifts, and we'll definitely find out how we go about getting that book. But tell us, what has reading meant for you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I have actually, I'm also naturally not really a natural reader. Like, I don't gravitate toward, and I have all kinds of excuses for that in all of this. But I love listening to books. I do read books, not usually cover to cover, but I kind of scan it and then I'd zero in and pick out whatever I want. I've been very fortunate in that, we have a podcast. You were my guest on my podcast. We've had a lot of really brilliant, guests on our podcast, including yourself. And what happens is I get to dig into their work in my preparation to talk to them, and they send me their books and things like that. And I get to really tap into the wisdom of a lot of really, really smart people. So that's one thing. The other thing that I have to tell you is, I know, we talked a little bit about synergy. One of the things that my wife brings to the party, we are each, the four of us, are very different in terms of the skills and the backgrounds and the approach that we have. We share same values and we love and respect each other, but we bring different gifts. And so one of the things that she brings is that she actually goes and identifies these different things that we need in our business. And like, she was the one who tapped into, Donald Miller's book, and she's brought in other books as well. And she goes through the entire book. She summarizes and takes the nuggets out of it. And then she brings it to the four of us, to all of us. And we sit down and just pour over that stuff and say, okay, how are we going to apply it? So I've kind of made up for my lack of sort of being a natural reader all the time by tapping into her passion to do that. So that's how we get tapped into a lot of, we get into a lot of really, really great wisdom. And then we bring it into our business and see how we're going to apply it.
And I love the fact that, because reading isn't for everybody. And I'll be honest with you, when I became an entrepreneur, I started reading a lot more.
Yeah.
I got wise because you have to use your time effectively. So Amazon has Audible.
Yes.
Audible.com. So I've joined that, and I get a Audible book once a month. And when I'm at the doctor's office, I don't listen to the radio when I'm in the car anymore. So right. I'll listen to either a podcast or I'll listen to an Audible book in the car. When I'm traveling, or used to travel anyway, when I was in the airport waiting or whatever, when you're on the airplane. So it was nice to have that ability to have my mind be active and learn at the same time. And, the truth be told, even here locally in Columbia, our library offers an online app that you can download audiobooks. And I'm sure that all the other, libraries across the country has that same feature. So, I'm an avid believer in growth. So I'll tell you this story, and you can tell me if this resonates with you as well. When I first became an entrepreneur, it was years. I was grinding and working, and it was by myself. And as the leader, you don't have really anybody to be accountable to other than your clients, or there's nobody to pour into you. So I found myself after about 3 or 4 years being stagnant, and I wasn't really stagnant, but it was just something I was weighted down. And I had the opportunity to go to a conference, and it was a veteran conference, or a conference for veterans' wives or something, but it was on small business. And I don't know if the thing was just that good, or if I was so hungry for that type of feeding. Yeah. And it was so powerful that I committed at that point that I came back rejuvenated. I was on fire. I had this newfound energy to work and focus on the business, kind of learning new stuff that I could apply. And I made a commitment that I would make sure that I attended at least 2 professional development events every year because I needed that connection and I needed to be fed. So what have been your experiences in those cases?
Yeah, I think it's so important what you're saying, because it's one thing to go after the knowledge that you know that you need, but it's another thing to tap into what you don't know that you don't know, right? And I speak at a lot of conferences around the world, and so I have to tell you, I don't remember the last time I actually bought a ticket to go to one, but basically what I do is, as I go to these conferences, whether it's virtual or nowadays or in person, I spend a great deal of time at the conference listening to other speakers, interacting with the participants and things like that. And I've always found it to be extremely helpful in that I find answers to questions I didn't know I should ask.
Yes.
And so it's so important to be part of a community. And again, going to the other point around reading, it's the same thing. It's like, for me, I would rather listen, but whether you listen or read, just bring something into your brain. And for me, it's like, I always tell people, I said, I listen to TED Talks a lot. And one of the things that I do is I actually make it a point to listen to some TED Talks that I really have no interest in. Now, this is actually, it might sound strange, but sometimes you see a TED Talk and the title sort of attracts you and you're like, wow, that's really good for me. I like to listen to that. But what I do is I make a point of listening to TED Talks with titles that don't really relate to me at all.
Right.
And what I've found is that in those talks, I get introduced to some things, a whole realm of knowledge that I didn't even know existed. And so it's really, really good to surround yourself with people who, think differently and have different information. And a lot of good can come out of that.
Awesome. So when we talk about being in business, I mentioned it earlier, kind of being solo, not having that person to talk to. And I know that you're a consultant and you coach. Have you experienced, or do you have your own coach? Do you have a list of mentors that have impacted you along the way on this entrepreneurship journey? And how has that impacted your business?
I do. I recommend that everybody have a coach. And for me, it's like having a coach doesn't mean you're messed up or you're broken. Olympic athletes have coaches and they're not messed up. They just recognize that, sometimes somebody else can see something in you that you can't see in yourself. So yes, I've engaged coaches over the years, but what I can tell you is again, I'm very, very blessed in that both of my kids, they're 32 and 33 years old, but they've been my coaches, like really, really my coaches since they were in their mid-teens. So they have this incredible ability to see the world a certain way, and their backgrounds in terms of their education and that sort of thing also helps as well. And so aside from my wife, we've been married almost 40 years, and she really keeps me on the straight and narrow, and sometimes has to hit me upside the head to get on the right track in terms of, hey, no, we ought to be thinking about it this way. But in terms of business coaching, my kids are my coaches, and I learn from them every week. I learn something new, and they are, I think I do this thing called spicy coaching, right? Because it's like, I want to give you something that might feel a little bit spicy, but I got to be honest with you. So that's how I can serve you. And I have to tell you, my kids don't shy away from spicy coaching. So they tell me like it is, because they know that we love each other, and I don't get offended if they say, look, you're not looking at this right, and so on and so forth. So those are my coaches that I use just about every day.
So there's so many things unraveling that. So we'll have to have a part 2 of this podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm going to touch on a couple of them. One, and we talked about the synergy, leadership, and how you leverage the energy of yourself and others. But I think it's so phenomenal that your team consists of your family members. Not only does it consist of your family members, but there's this generational gap that we're experiencing for the first time in history. We have 5 almost about to be 6 generations working in the workforce at one time. And I found that there's a lot of clashing going on. You look at, a baby boomer and a millennial trying to work together. And it sounds like you're that person that has found that secret sauce, not only from a parent to a child, but maybe a baby boomer to a Gen X or a millennial. Talk to us about how that works. How have you been successful in bringing that family dynamic and not having it impact either the business or your home?
Yeah, so I'm not only in a family business, but somehow over the years I've been really attracted to, or I've attracted clients that are either family businesses or small businesses that feel like a family, that have really grown beyond their capabilities in terms of systems and all of that. And so they bring me in and I work with them. So I have a great deal of experience with that. And one thing that I know is that in family businesses, or when you work with your really close friends, there's so much at stake that it's kind of a high risk, high return game, right? Because the risk is that, basically what's at stake is your relationships, but there's high return if you can master it. And the way you master it is, and again, I think we've done a really good job with that, in that if your relationship is based on trust and love and respect, then you appreciate the other person's, different opinions and different viewpoints. It's not always like, oh, great, I'm glad you think this way. No, sometimes we have our knockdown dragouts, but it's all in a really, really positive way. Say, no, I disagree with that. What do you think? What do you think about that? Why do you think that way? But when you have that happening on the basis of love and trust and respect, then it really works out. And so for me, it's like, whether we're talking about diversity and inclusion, or we're talking about, family members who are different from each other, I think it's more about appreciating that we are the same. If once you really go a few layers deep, we're all the same in terms of our desires to succeed, desire to be part of something big, and all of that. But then if you really appreciate that, then you begin to truly be interested in those different opinions and different approaches. And that is how synergy really gets created.
Wow, I couldn't have said any better. Thank you so much, Amir.
Thank you.
So as we come to a close, if you could give our audience one piece of leadership advice, what would that be?
So, look, here's the thing. I might just fold a couple of things into this one statement here, but I think sometimes we complicate leadership development. And quite honestly, leadership development is quite simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And it has to do with declaring something bold. So if I had to give your listeners one advice, I'm like instead of just going after becoming a better leader, declare something bold and extraordinary. And then in the service of delivering that and making it happen, pull to yourself the skills and the resources and the abilities that you need to develop so you can become the kind of person who delivers that extraordinary result. So without a bold and extraordinary declaration, I think you're just kind of picking up tools and skills. But you've got to declare something that really gets you excited, gets you up in the morning, wanting to grow, wanting to make some things happen. And that, to me, is the very key to leadership development.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amir.
My pleasure.
Audience, tell us how can we get your book? And then how can we get some more information about you and your business?
Sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So the book is The Transformative Leader. Boldly declare, courageously pursue, and abundantly achieve the extraordinary. It is available on Amazon, but we also always sort of bring people to our website. That's the best place where you can get it, again, in audio or ebook, Spanish version, and all that. The website is theghannadgroup.com, Ghannad, theghannadgroup.com. And that's where you can find out all about our business. And, we have a leadership forum as well that we call On the Court, onthecourtleadership.com. So all of those places, you can actually get access to the book and find out more about what we do.
Awesome. So here's what we're going to do, Amir.
Yeah.
For our listeners, the first person that emails me at info@krjconsulting.com, that's info@krjconsulting.com, and email me the title of Amir's book, I will purchase and send you a free copy.
Fantastic.
So again, info@krjconsulting.com. And the first person that does that will receive a free copy of Amir's book. So Amir, again, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule and sharing with us some great information, tools, and tips. We look forward to having you on again, I hope.
Thank you.
And for those of you who are listening, thank you again for appearing on or coming and joining us for another episode of Synergy Leadership. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Synergy Leadership Podcast with Karen R. Jenkins. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe, rate, review, and share our show. See you next time.